Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Train Man, and welcome back to the Zombie Train, episode 210. That means we're only 3 away from a route review, and I actually know what route it's going to be already. I should start downloading that. Anyways, this episode, we work on some various terrain stuff around this area. This is not stuff that I've worked on. I haven't been around here in a while, and the kicker is that I get to use some of the new, or basically the new major water thing that came with Tane, which is the fact that the water will sort of change elevation, and I found some rapids effects, and they make the loud waterfall noise, and it's annoying. But it looks okay, so there's that. Also, I sort of jump around a little bit, and overall, there's probably more wandering about in this episode than a normal episode, but I was trying to make sure that the road network that is laid out on the map is sort of sensical. That everything attaches to something, at least in some extent, in some way. Or, things could attach to one another. I'm tempted to throw down tiles and sort of map it out just for the sake, but anyways, I digress. I set up some other stuff to make the thing a little bit more worldly, and I started reworking catenaries as well, and there's work to be done in Douglas, there's work to be done in a hell of a lot of places, but I've sort of reached the point where I don't need to work on the map quite as much. I need to work back there, that's right, that area needs to be finished. But, there aren't areas that I really have to work on to push to get them ready for production at this point. Most of the areas that we're going to use for that are done already. So, it's nice to think about, but it leaves me sort of lacking with the motivation. Anyways, today we're going to talk about U.S. Army engines, and frankly, this isn't much of a topic. I don't know what episode this was asked by, but since the last question was asked by East Rail, and I wrote them both down at the same time, well, he said he asked it, then I'm going to credit this one to him as well. If it was you, let me know. If it wasn't you, say something. Whatever. Comments. I did include this one in here. Now we actually have quite a few different things to go through. Some specific, some not, some interesting, some all, meh. But this is a topic that, see, I don't necessarily check or really even care about the full histories of all the locomotives that we end up with under the Zombie Train Incorporated. Why would we? We don't care. We want to know what their power output is, we want to know what they can pull. We want to know, are they going to be good runners or bad runners? Are they going to be better for speed or better for drag? Better for pull. There are a couple engines that do stand out. One of them was a consolidation, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was, only that we got it in pieces. It was listed for sale originally, way back before the Great Panic, and it was one of the things where we're trying to scrounge up every last engine. We're going through parks and amusement parks and, old roundhouses and, historic sites and places like that, and, trying to pull out every locomotive that we could find. Even one came out of a restaurant parking lot near me, whatever. And get them running, get them into service, and I go, okay, there's this one that I recall, and it's in pieces, but it's complete. Like, it's a whole engine. And it was, okay, well, what kind of condition is it in? Well, it's in pieces, okay. Okay, well, let's go find it. And we went and we found it. I don't remember where it was, but we ended up towing it back to the nearest roundhouse. Our, nearest sheds. It wasn't necessarily a roundhouse. And during this time, it was, okay, we've got an engine, we've got a tender that's mostly a frame, we've got an engine that's mostly a boiler, and we've got a whole bunch of parts. Throw all the parts in a boxcar, bring these guys back, have people start assembling it, make sure that it won't blow up on us in the meantime, but at that point in time, it was important to get locomotives out for service, but it was not necessarily, it wasn't do or die. So, I remember this engine being particularly, it took a while to get running, but that wasn't because it was difficult to get running. It's because we actually had the ability to go through and check everything. Make sure that there were no problems with the boiler, no problems with the firebox, no, nothing weird about the balancing and the wheels. We had some problems with that. Things would just get... We had, especially, okay, this is an aside a little bit, especially with engines that have been sitting in parks or wherever, stationary for a long time. You get some nice big flat spots on those wheels. And so you go to run the engine, and it's the thump, the thump, the thump. And it's tough to get moving, and the engine always wants to sit on the flat spots, and it's a rough ride, and it takes either a lot of time and a lot of running to sort of work those flat spots out, or it takes pulling the tires off the engine, or it just takes scraping them down, basically. Which means, in most cases, if you really want to get to the whole thing, it'll mean dropping the drivers, either to replace the tires or just to sort of measure all the way around and shave off whatever you can, whatever you can shave off and still keep a tire, but just to get rid of the flat spots, to get everything down to the same width all the way around, all the way around the wheel. So that was sort of an unforeseen problem with a lot of these park engines, and this engine was initially no different, but it was one of the ones that when we got it late, we decided that, guess what? We actually have the facilities now, and we have the opportunity that we can take this thing, and we can basically give it a full rebuild. We got the old tires off, made new tires, put new tires on. I think we replaced one of the rods. The cab was not assembled. We had to assemble it. There were some pieces that had sort of rusted or rotted out, and we replaced those. Those were in the cab floor. The tender, as I said, was basically just a frame, so we built the tender from the ground up. Almost. I believe we actually replaced the trucks on that tender as well, so in the end, only the frame survived from the original tender. The trucks were so badly, corroded, pitted and rusting out, that even though the wheel sets were okay, it was frankly easier for us to just make a new set of trucks and wheels and everything entirely. I believe the truck frames, they ended up getting scrapped and melted down. The wheels probably went to a freight car or something. I don't remember those getting tossed out, because in a lot of cases, when you're dealing with secondhand equipment, even if you can produce all sorts of whatever, then even if you have the production to feasibly replace everything in your collection, you're going to stick with the stuff you already have, because it's significantly less work, and it is significantly less resources, and it's less time. Usually, if you're doing it right. Sometimes we came across the, you know what, in order to keep this old thing, in order to get, let's take for example the tender trucks. They were runnable, but in order to get them to a state where it would run well, it would take an inordinate amount of effort, basically, to cut them open, respring them, fill in all sorts of gaps that had started to develop, fix cracks that had started to develop, and at that point it was, how much effort would be put in to fix a set of old tender trucks when we can just make a new set, or in some cases or we could just pull a set off of something else. The trucks under a tender don't have to be tender trucks. It's not like the tender cares. But anyways, yeah, this engine ended up being the nice, shiniest, newest thing at one point in time. It was the newest engine, it was the best engine. What's the word? In the sense that it wasn't best. What am I trying to say? It was the most well-maintained engine, basically, when it rolled out of the shop, aside from all of the brand new ones, essentially. Because it was the engine that had undergone what amounts to the most recent rebuild, period. And it was pretty sweet, and it was nice to have this engine, and it was, now again, this was some U.S. Army engine, and it didn't have a formal road name or number, and it's one of those that just got lumped into the consolidation pile of initial locomotives that we had, because our replicas ended up in a different numbering system almost. Not almost, but everything over. Okay, all Zombie Train locomotives with ZT IDs, Zombie Train Incorporated IDs, basically, over 2,000 were new builds, and over 3,000 were diesels, etc. But hold on, where is the locomotive roster? There it is. So we had, in the end, we had, how many engines in total did we have? I'm trying to see if I already summed this or not, because I don't think oh yeah. So in the end, all told, there were 1,184 locomotives. These went up to number 1608, which was a Jubilee, which was a 444. This consolidation, because we had 150 consolidations, this was IHR number 349. And that is the last consolidation that we didn't build. I don't think we built any consolidations, actually. We built mostly Mikados and Pacifics. They're good medium-range all-around engines. But anyways. Yeah, it was number 349, and 349 got a pretty decent reputation for being a very, very good runner. And on top of that, a good steamer, and just having virtually nothing wrong with it compared to all of the other engines where anyone that knows steam engines knows that, okay, they've got a life of their, they've got a mind of their own, they've got a life of their own, they're going to have different problems, different issues, blah, blah, blah. Everyone that's ever worked with steam engines knows that they just act differently. They have personalities. And every engine has its quirks, its problems. It does that, but don't worry about it. This one had almost none of that. Also, I just noticed that entire row of buildings has broken alpha textures. Go back if you want to see that. Holy crap. Wow. Okay. And let's see. I don't know the extent of which engines were Army and which ones were not. I don't know. It's a number of engines. But the other thing to point out, the other engine actually that does stand out is Granite Rock 10. And Granite Rock 10 was such a fun little runner. Such a fun little runner around on the West Coast. She never went too far from home, but it was like a super Hank. I was saying, you keep the 040s around for, shuttle service, basically, when you need to. But having Granite Rock 10, which can pull more and go faster, it was a super shuttle. And that thing would be up and down, in California, Oregon, Washington, and then, all the way down to the border, and sometimes into Nevada as well. But, and I don't know, that engine got so much mileage. It got an incredible amount of mileage. It's worked for us, and it worked for the military as well. Because we helped them. And Granite Rock 10 saw a lot of officials being pulled behind it. Which I guess was a point of publicity. I don't know what engine number that would have been. It would have been one of the first 060s that we had, because she was already operational. But I can't check that right now. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And I'll see you next week. Post any questions in the comments. Trainman out.